Hello and welcome to the Blue Fire podcast. We are so happy to be back here again for our third podcast. I am Mary Gandy and I am based out of Tucson, Arizona, and I'm the founder of Blue Fire.
And I am Courtney and I'm based out of Long Beach, California, and I've been a coach since 2024. So, personal updates since last time. Two of my athletes did their first 50K, and they both did excellent. They both met their goals, exceeded their goals. One was coming off an injury and ended up still being able to complete it and feel good. And the other one blew past her goals so far that her parents came to watch the race, but they showed up too late to see her finish because she finished so fast. So that was just a really exciting time to see them get to race, and I got to crew them. So that was really awesome.
Wonderful. Courtney, what was a highlight out of crewing that you had? Especially crewing your own athletes. You've been training them and really invested in what they're doing.
Probably coming to see them through the aid stations, and they seemed like they were having fun. Mm-hmm. And then as a coach, I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness that they're having fun and they feel strong, because I take that very personally. Like if they were having a horrible time, there's a mix of like how they're experiencing it, what they're doing. But I would feel a lot of ownership over those bad feelings too. So to have them have a wonderful day and to have them come out of it figuring out what race to do next, that just felt like a huge win for me. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah. What have you been up to, Mary?
Well, I fell asleep so early last night. I ate dinner and my husband said, "You barely set your plate down on the couch before you fell asleep." Maybe those two things were happening at the same time. I have been a long-term substitute teacher in high school for most of this year. And so the official last day of school for the kids was Thursday. Yesterday was Friday. Everything pretty much was completed and turned in. And I think I just had that moment as a teacher when it's all over. So I slept 10 hours last night, which is very unheard of for me to sleep that long. And that just felt great. I'm excited for summer. Looking back, one of my athletes finished Boston Marathon. She did great. She has been a long time Blue Fire athlete, like back in the OG days of triathlons and our gym that we had up in Washington State. So it's really fun to still work with her and see her have great success. So yeah, it's been a good couple of months.
Nice. Also on fun racing updates, not for our athletes, but Cocodona just happened since we talked last. And just the fun highlight of Rachel outright winning Cocodona, the 250-mile race in Arizona, and that I believe the top three women all broke the women's record, and then Rachel broke the overall course record. And so it's just such an exciting thing to see women doing so well in the sport.
Absolutely. What a highlight. What a fun week too. And it's amazing to see how much the sport of trail running has grown and to be able to have many races where we can watch coverage. I mean, what they do at Cocodona is incredible, to have a full week of 24 hours a day, virtually 24 hours a day. They don't have commentary all that time, but there is coverage. And my family doesn't always love it because I always announce it's Cocodona week. That means this takes precedence on the TV, YouTube. Cocodona
Yes.
coverage on the TV. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved watching Rachel come into the last stretch of the race, and she's racing up a mountain in Flagstaff. The commentators were all talking about how they'd all done workouts on that hill where they walked, and here's Rachel coming in after 225 miles, running up the hill, while the person who has the camera is running up behind him, and so the commentators were all like appreciating also the people filming it who have to run while holding all this camera equipment and like satellite communication equipment to share this coverage. So it's really cool what they're doing at those races.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So last time on the podcast, we talked about goals. And so to kind of fit the theme of how we would start working with an athlete, today we get to talk about nutrition and fueling. And there's so much to cover with fueling that we narrowed it down to what are the topics we would want to cover with a brand new athlete. We just want to put a disclaimer out there that nutrition is a really important part of everyone's life and everyone's goals. So for this specific podcast, we wanted to focus on nutrition advice focused on endurance runners. So with that said, if there's things that bring you value and you take away from that podcast, that's so great. And if there's things that don't fit your needs right now, that's totally fine too. So just take it with a grain of salt and think about for yourself what you need in fueling and nutrition while we have this conversation.
Thank you, Courtney. I think that's so important. And I was even reflecting as you were talking about that, is that we have been talking about this podcast and planning on it for quite a while. I don't know, maybe a couple months. And I think part of that is we both care so much about nutrition and in so many different angles. We have our own experiences. And there's so much to cover. There's so much that we want to share. So I think landing on this place of starting off planning for success at the beginning of training. And I think it could be a new athlete and also maybe someone who has experience as an athlete, but you're at the beginning of your training program and what things are really important to be thinking through as you are starting to work towards that goal. Well, so as we do this, we also think about the why. The why, we love the why. If you didn't get to listen to our last podcast, I encourage you to go back and listen to podcast number 2, where we talk about goals and we talk about the why. I was thinking back on my own why of running, which really has a lot to do with my own emotional health and really being there and being my best version of myself for my family that I can be. And so as we're talking about nutrition, we fold that in and say, okay, so we know our why, and this is my goal is, or my why is to be this best version of myself. Fueling goes into that. So we think about also, why do we care? Why do we care? Other reasons that we care about nutrition. Some of it's just enjoyment on the run itself and feeling strong on the run itself. If you think about if you've experienced this, having a run where you didn't feel great versus having a run where you did feel great, and what were the parts of that? I think back on my own, and nutrition is very, very intertwined into that and to why I felt good. So we can feel strong when we have good nutrition.
With the enjoyment of the run, I think a lot of people coming into endurance running for the first time haven't needed or felt the impacts of not fueling. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And you don't realize that those long runs can actually feel really good until you properly fuel and you realize that you can go for a 10, 20-mile run and at the end of it still feel good. You know, that is an option. And so we're doing it because we enjoy the running, and having the fuel to feel good and feel strong is very important.
That is such a great point, Courtney. Yes, maybe you haven't felt that yet, but listen to us today. Another thing is when we're preparing for a long distance event or a long distance goal, we need to practice. We actually train our guts to be able to handle the nutrition that we are utilizing. And so maybe the fueling that you're going to use in the race, you may be working your way into using that. And Courtney, I think you just have a great piece of advice for your athletes. So share that with us.
Yes. So some of my athletes were doing um, this like ultra running for the very first time. And so they were new to this idea of eating so much during your runs. And so one of the workouts I had was, with them building up nutrition for the first time, instead of giving them a goal, I just gave them eat as much as you can possibly eat during that run, Because a lot of times I think it's easier to just hit the minimums. Like if your goal, like you have a certain goal for your food, if you hit the minimums, you're good. But again, you don't realize how good you can feel until you figure out what your body needs. And so having them go out and just eat as much as they could, maybe they didn't feel good afterwards because, again, we need to train our gut. But just for that experience of how much food truly impacts the way you feel during that run, I think they were pleasantly surprised at how much more energy they had. And then it's a good benchmark to see what you're kind of capable of doing. So I really like that workout of just one time going out there and just seeing how much you can possibly eat during that run. But of course, in general, you don't want to overdo it and feel sick. But we
Yeah.
can get more into that.
Right, right. Yeah. What does that actually look like? It might not be a whole pizza on a 6 mile run, but I think I was thinking about that. It's like finding that edge. Like we need to find that upper limit of what we can handle, and then as we're training our guts, that might change too. As our bodies are getting used to eating more than we thought we could. We were able to expand on that.
And I also want to note that with that workout, the amount of food they ended up eating was kind of the minimum I wanted them to eat. They just had never hit the minimum before during their runs. And so, again, it was just a great way to like try that out for the first time.
Fabulous. Fabulous. I love that workout. The other thing that it gets into is recovery. Recovery is so important, and actually when we're feeling enough during our run, that also leaves us so that we're not starting, in the tank when we go into recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about recovery nutrition later. It also goes into our overall health, and having enough fueling for our everyday lives, as well as preventing injury. We want to make sure that we have enough fuel so that our muscles can repair, so that our tendons and ligaments are able to be fueled and recover well, so that we don't end up having maybe breakdown, which can lead to injury down the road.
And so then what does fueling successfully actually end up looking like? It's a feeling. It's a feeling that you're going to have for yourself, and it's not something that you're going to be able to like visibly see in somebody else. And so it's a practice. It's something that as you practice fueling, you're going to feel the impacts on your run. You're going to feel the impacts on your recovery. One of the things I wanted to say was fueling is going to look different for everybody. And so there is a huge difference between what women need and what men need within fueling for endurance sports. And so it is really important when you're trying to gain information about what you need as a person, you understand whether that information is coming based off of women's needs or men's needs. For example, women need more carbs than men. It's just how our bodies process things. But it becomes really important in how you feel.
I love that, Courtney. And there's been, we hear lots of different, I will call it food trends, not just in endurance sports, but all over the world. And we can probably name a whole bunch of them. But I think there was a time, and I think it probably is still out there, that fasting is that I've seen that as a trend. And then going into runs fasted, there were studies about that, but then when studies started to come out that were actually focusing on women, Dr. Stacey Sims has been a well-known name for that in recent years. And one of her books called Roar, I love talking about, she has this phrase, women are not small men. And she talks about this need for continuous carbs before training, during training, after training. And we'll include a link in our show notes, which talks about one of her articles discussing carb loading. And really what she's talking about, that article isn't necessarily that women should carb load, but that women should always be eating carbs and fueling with carbs. So you can check that out for some more details on that, because we're not going to get super into that today.
Yes, we've decided we would love to do a full podcast on how to fuel like a woman in the future.
Yes.
But also with that, there's a really important side of, if you're going to fueling in a way that brings you value and joy is going to be a really important way to be consistent with your fueling. So having the space to try your own foods. There are so many endurance athletes out there on social media, and they have their way of doing things. It's okay if your way looks a little different. It takes practice to figure out what foods bring you value, make you feel good. For example, again, the two athletes I had that just did the 50K. Oh, we have matching cups today.
Oh, look at that. Super.
The two athletes that did the 50K, one of the athletes felt better using goos for their fueling, and the other athlete had bagel sandwiches. And so they just found what worked best for them, and they trained it. And so it's important to not compare what you want and use to what other people want and use, because your body is different. So it's okay that your fueling looks different.
That's so important, because you made that point about social media, and I think that it's easy to see something on social media and feel like, well, this athlete uses this nutrition. Well, they're also getting paid by that company.
Yes.
So that might or might not be the right fuel for them. That's a whole different thing, because they might be sponsored by them. But I think finding out, what works for you, and that gets back to why we need to practice. We're not only fueling to fuel that long run and practicing with it, but we also take that time to try out different things and see what works. So that is very, very important.
Yeah. And then also for just the sense of, why are we fueling for these activities? If you think of your body like an engine, then of course you need fuel to power you moving forward. Like, your body needs to use something to get yourself to move, to run, to build muscles. And so with that very simple connection, the power of fueling is directly connected to how much fuel you have to move forward. And if you have sufficient fuel to move forward, then you're going to do better in your performance. You're going to do better in your recovery, because your body has the resources it needs to perform those activities. If you are under fueling, then your body is going to run out of its ability to move forward and recover. And so, like, the fueled version of yourself is going to be the strongest version of yourself. It's going to be directly connected to your performance and how you feel. With that idea, feeling good is something that you feel. Feeling strong is something that you feel. It is not something that you actually see. You might see it in performance, but it's not something you're going to be able to visibly see on another person. It's something you feel for yourself. And so that's something you need to connect with yourself with, to kind of have that feedback of whether or not you're doing yourself justice in your fueling.
My question for you on that is, what might someone feel like?
That is a great question. So let me tell you. So there's an actual term for being underfueled, and it's called relative energy deficiency in sport. Relative energy deficiency in sport, again, connecting to you're just underfueled for the amount of activity you're doing. Most of the time, it is completely on accident, especially with these endurance sports where you're going out for a race that might be 5, 10, 15, 24 hours. The amount of calories you're burning is so high that the amount of calories you need to consume to compensate is also so high. It's almost like it's so hard to meet that. So a lot of times this relative energy deficiency is unintentional. Mm-hmm. And so the feelings that often come up with this can vary whether you're a man or a woman, and it can vary on your own person. But some of the first cues are you're tired, your performance decreases, you're more irritable, you have higher anxiety, you have issues sleeping. Fundamentally, some of the things that are changing are your hormones within your body from the underfueling. So for women, one of the first things that often comes up is amenorrhea or the lack of your menstrual cycle. And so that can be a really important sign for you if you have a menstrual cycle, to use that as a gauge if it starts to change or you lose it, that your body might be kind of saving itself because it's in this low energy state. Mm-hmm. So that can be a really important sign for women who menstruate to watch out for. Another one that is a very obvious one or a very bold sign is stress fractures in your bones. It is slightly higher connected to women just because of bone strength being connected to estrogen a little bit stronger in women. And then for men, it's a little bit more connected to testosterone. And so men's bones tend to have a little bit more resistance to that change in your calories. So women are more likely to have the stress fractures occur, but men are definitely still susceptible to that. Mm-hmm. So, and then one other one is your immune system often decreases its activity, and so you're more likely to get sick. Oftentimes you'll get several of these signs. So these are really important things to look out for, although it's hard because a lot of these things could also be connected to other things that are happening in your life and your body. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We'll attach this survey, this study done, an overview of 60 different studies of endurance athletes. Mm-hmm. And I think they covered over 6,000 athletes in 30 different sports. They found that about 45% of the athletes had low energy availability. And so with that thought in mind and knowing how prevalent it is within sports, it is really important to then look out for those signs for yourself to protect your body so that way we can keep doing these fun activities.
Courtney, I love that what you were emphasizing when you were first talking about red S is that often happens, people aren't trying. It just happens. It's just life. I remember my kids were little. I was training for Ironman, and I didn't know it then, but those signs, our bodies are putting up orange flag, yellow flag, red flag. Our bodies are incredible the way that they will give us feedback. And I look back and I can see, sometimes it's easy to see those when you're out of a situation. But I can look back and see, I remember feeling this incredibly tired feeling, but it's just really easy to put it off and to think, well, maybe it's because of this or because of my life, or I'm a mom and I'm busy. And I think what's really important is to just stop, and if we start to see some of those signals from our bodies, to just take a look and see, are we eating enough? Maybe check in with someone, maybe check in with a professional who can help guide us, because sometimes on our own that can be a challenging thing to do, but to just make sure we're getting enough fuel. And then if it isn't that, but that was a stat. You said 45% of athletes they found in that
Yeah,
study.
in
That's
those
a lot of
studies. Yeah.
people. Yeah. And okay, so I'm not that. Now I can look at, maybe it is other. Now I can start looking at other aspects of why I'm having those different warning signals come up in my body.
I think also within running sport, a lot of those symptoms have been normalized. For example, like amenorrhea, the loss of your period, for a long time, that was not looked at as a negative sign. Or just this idea that, of course, you're just exhausted all the time, you're working really hard. But that's not actually how it has to feel. And this is all information we're learning in real time as we're just learning, we're gaining more information. And so it's okay that like we're changing how we're doing things because we just know more information now. But I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
one also really important idea too, especially within our endurance running sport, is this idea of you think you can make up the calories, but you can't. If you are just having your everyday life and maybe on the weekends you go for a long hike, you can bring a couple snacks. Maybe you don't eat enough on your hike. You come home, you eat a huge meal, and then, maybe you're tired for a day and then you're fine. When you're doing that, like maybe you underfueled for that hike, but like you're only doing it sometimes. Your body makes it up. Underfueling occasionally, not super harmful for you. However, when you're training for these big events where you might be running every single day, you can't just underfuel one day and think tomorrow you're going to make it up, because you're going to do that activity again. And so that's when we're going to talk about how you fuel during your runs also, because as you're actively using up that fuel, when you finish your run and you eat a big meal, that big meal doesn't actually make up all the calories you might have used during your run. So then it becomes important that throughout your run and after the run and in everyday life, you're continuously working on those calories so we can fuel these activities.
I love that. I was thinking, I have a phrase of where we push on the gas pedal, let off the gas pedal, that I use for training and workouts, where we decide, okay, should I do this workout? Should I pull back? When to do that? But I think with nutrition, we're kind of always on the gas pedal on nutrition, so to speak, and that even when it's a lighter week of training, we still need to be paying attention to our nutrition, because that's when our body's recovering even more. And now when we do that, we go back stronger into that week of training. And so I think kind of having that, if you need to reframe that into thinking, oh my gosh, I'm training less, so I should be eating less. No, actually, I'm training less, my body's recovering, I'm feeling that recovery, so I can go stronger into my next week of training, or my next day of training, whatever that is. Very good. Very good. Well, speaking of fueling, training, and getting all the nutrition in that we need, it is really important to figure out kind of the first step that I address with my athletes is how. How are you going to do this fueling? An important thing, and Courtney and I brought our packs today. So our packs are, I'm glad this is not, we cannot smell on this. My pack just went for a run this morning. But we just thought we would kind of go through our running vests and talk about how do we carry this, because this is really important. If we are working on especially our during training fueling, we've got to have a way to carry our hydration, carry our nutrition with us. And I almost wear my vest on every single run. I don't know, maybe it's my comfort vest now. I'm just used to having it. But I'll go through in a minute the things that I carry and share kind of why I do that. How about you, Courtney? How often do you usually use your vest for your workouts?
Right now, I'm using my vest if it's over maybe a 90-minute run. But I also have this little water bottle thing. I don't remember how much water it holds, But I actually love it, and it sits on my hand, and I actually don't have to hold on to it. So it's just like there, and it has a little pocket. Um, but for me, like under 90 minutes, I bring this, and this has water, and depending on the run, electrolytes or fuel, I can always put a little snack in here. And then, yeah, I have my running vest, which I tend to use when I'm on actual like trails and doing a longer run. And then this is my running vest. Um, and then with that, I have my 2 water bottles. I chose a vest, or I chose water bottles that have this giant straw thing because I drink more water when I don't have to lift my water bottle out. I'm all about the convenience. If it's slightly inconvenient, I'm not going to do it. So I have this giant water bottle spout, so it's like right here, and then it's just in my face the whole time. And then I'm like, oh, water. And then I drink it. And then I have 2 because I love having one that's water, one that is electrolytes, or some sort of fueling liquid.
Okay. And then do you also carry a bladder, a hydration bladder?
I actually don't own a hydration bladder. I have a 1 liter soft flask water bottle that is for backpacking. It's actually a water filter. But it just happens to be a soft flask and I use it anyways. If I need more than a liter, so this carries a liter total, I have 1 more liter of a soft flask that I put just in the back here. And when I need to switch out water, I will physically take out that flask and refill one of these other ones, or I'll hold that soft flask in the front. And it's a 1 liter soft flask, but it actually fits really well in this pocket that I have. And so I've never needed more than 2 liters of water in any of my activities or events that I've done because of aid stations or catering around water sources.
Okay. And tell us what else do you carry in your pack as far as like your nutrition? Where do you put your nutrition?
Yes.
That sort of thing. What else?
So, so this is actually I think this is an 8 liter. I got this size because when I got it, I was living up in Washington and I wanted a pack that I could put some sort of jacket in to have that gear if I'm up in the mountains and I get cold. What I normally do is put in most of my snacks in this back little zipper pocket that I can't access. And then in the front, I have a little pocket right here. And so then I put my pocket snacks in here. And all of my fueling is done up in 150 calorie baggies, which we will get into. But I have those, usually 2 snacks in each pocket, and that'll last me an hour or 2 before I have to switch out more snacks. And then I also have a pocket where I carry my phone. And then if I need to, I have a little Garmin device that I attach to it. I have that because I backpack. And so since I already have it and pay for the subscription, I'll bring that on my trail runs, just have it on there. That way, in case something happens, I can send out a little signal for help. And I think that's most of the gear I carry.
Did you use that pack at Black Canyon?
Yes.
I thought it looked familiar.
Yeah.
That's a great thing when you're running with friends or you have a pacer, you can get each other's snacks out for you.
Yes.
I remember getting some snacks out of that pack. Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, kind of gets into how everyone's a little different in what they need. One important thing is when you are considering what to carry as far as whether it's handheld vest or what kind of vest, thinking about look at your goal race and how far apart are your aid stations? How long is it going to take for you to get to them? If it's a lot of elevation, it might take a little more time than if it's a flat race. How hot is it? How much, and how much you need to carry. And then also read through your race manuals because some races, in fact, Cocodona, that we were talking about earlier in the podcast, there's requirements for what you have to carry. Sometimes it's clothing that you have to have, a headlamp that you have to have. I know that at the beginning of Cocodona, there's a certain amount of water that you have to carry. And so those are important things to check out as you're trying on and figuring out, what do I want to have for a pack.
Yeah, and I think that goes for all types of packs. For like backpacking, hiking, trail running, figure out what you need to carry before you decide the size of the pack. Because if you get a really small pack, and because that's what you like, but then you realize the amount of items you need to carry is a lot larger than the size of your pack, now you need to get a second pack. Or the way it carries within the pack itself might be uncomfortable. So a good way to decide the size of the pack you need, figure out what you need in the pack first.
Absolutely. And on that note, also then you're trying to figure out, well, okay, I know what I need to carry, then how do I figure out what pack? I really recommend going to your local running store that carries vests, your outdoor store, try on different packs and wear them around the store and see how you like the fit. There's men's specific, women's specific, and then they also have unisex packs. And so figuring out within a brand, because also, fits vary within a brand, and then just finding out what fits you, thinking about one thing that I didn't realize when I was first buying packs was that the pack fits different if you have a full bladder or no bladder in the pack. And so if you get the largest size vest you can get, and then you don't have water in it, then it's going to be loose. And nothing irritates me more in a run than my pack like sloshing. Well, not necessarily sloshing, that's a whole nother thing, but just your stuff bouncing around, and that's really quite annoying.
A thing to also consider, which again, not something I realized until I owned a pack, was this pack itself closes based off these little bungee straps. So this little bungee strap, it's going to be really fun for the people listening.
Right.
Okay, so this little bungee strap like just attaches to this other little clip. But that means that it's stretchy where it attaches. And so when it's really full, like it just fits different, like you were saying, but like the stretchy part, it doesn't hold its structure in the same way as if you had just a little clip that just like comes across, clips like a life jacket. I don't know, another example. A life jacket. Because that's going to be a more sturdy fit, and it's going to be more structured. So just something to consider for your comfort. You might like one or the other.
Yeah, very nice. Well, I almost always run with a bladder, so this has been my most recent pack. I think we both have Solomon packs, not that we're necessarily endorsing them, but I have found because of that fit, this does have the bungee. I really like the bungee, and I do the similar thing with you, Courtney, except for I just carry the water in the bladder. I have water, and then I carry one soft flask that has my electrolyte calorie liquid drink in it. I like this one because there's good spots for my phone. I always have to have my phone. I also carry, and it has a nice little spot. Okay, this is like amongst, sorry about all the clanking. I carry a personal alarm. I have pepper spray, and I have bear spray in here too, just because I run out in the wilderness, and be it people or wildlife that are going to be affecting me in a negative way. I just like to be prepared for that. It is a little more weight to carry those things. And then also what I like about this one is you can just reach into the back pouch and grab out your nutrition. One thing I like to do, this has so many pockets on it that I have a section that I am supposed to, but I don't always do, is put my used nutrition baggies into that so that I can calculate, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, so I can calculate at the end of a run or when I'm doing a race, my crew can calculate how much I'm actually eating so we can make sure that we're on track. So very, very important to figure out what your gear is going to be, and then how or what you're going to carry, what is going to be the needs for you for a race. And then we're going to get into now looking at our pre-workout nutrition during and post, like what stuff are we going to put into these bags. But before we get into that, Courtney's going to talk a little bit about our macronutrients and how they fuel us and how they're important for us.
Yeah. So a lot of times when you see recommendations for, say, during your run fueling, it'll be in carbs instead of calories. And that's because there's a large functional difference between carbs, fats, and proteins and how your body uses them in running. So in everyday life, it's important to get a variety, right? But the way they function is important to understand for how they're going to process during your activity. So carbs, they are your instant fuel. Your body can process them very quickly and use and access that fuel very quickly. And that is why, for the most part, we're going to be carb focused in a lot of the nutrition around running because our body needs those calories right away. Fat is a great energy source. However, it is a slow energy source. You might be taking in those calories, but your body's not accessing those calories right away during your run. Also, with fats, it slows down your digestion a little bit. And so, if you're taking fats with carbs, then you're not only slowing down your digestion for the fat calories, but you're also slowing down your digestion for the carb calories. So it might take your body longer to access those calories from the carbs. So that's why we usually focus on carbs only, more or less, because if your digestion is slowing down during your run, that might cause some like digestion discomfort and gut problems. The other thing is protein. Protein is another slow digestion nutrient. Although, of course, proteins are incredibly important in your recovery and rebuilding muscles. So we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of protein in your recovery, but for the most part, we're going to focus around carbs.
All of our macronutrients have value. Now we're talking about, though, today is where to place that value, where to place them around running and around our training. So we get into our pre-workout. This is so important that we do go into our training fueled. So this might look different depending on when you train during the day. If you get up first thing in the morning, that's usually when I do some of my training. You do want to get in something, maybe within 30 minutes to an hour before you go out to train. And what does this look like? We want to have things that are easy to process. So as Courtney was just saying, fats and protein take time and effort for our gut. So when we put in carbs that are easy for us to process, that allows for us for our bodies to be able to utilize that fuel in our training. Now, depending how much we're going to have depends on how long our training session is. We're not fueling for the whole training session. We're going to be fueling throughout that training session. But if we're, getting ready for a very long event, we might have more carbohydrates and more total volume of fuel before we go in. We also might give that a little more time for our body to process that a little bit. But in general, around 150 to 200 calories or 250 calories is about what we want to have. And that is calories of carbohydrate. And then this might look like if we are training for a long event, when it's our long run, we might be upping that amount of calories and we might be training our body to be able to process and take that in throughout the training. So on long run days, each long run, you might be trying to add a little bit more, and kind of on that, trying to find where that edge is. Like Courtney used that one workout with her athletes to see how much we could have. We also want to do something similar to that when we're in our training, seeing how much our bodies can process, how much time we need to comfortably process that food, but also that we are still fueled with glycogen going into our training. So Courtney and I are going to share a little bit today of what our own preferences is. As we've shared, it's a little different for everybody. Courtney, what are your favorite pre-workout, and maybe for what would you have for a shorter workout, and what would you have going into a longer session?
Yeah, so again, we talked about it depends on time of day. So for me, I'm going to eat breakfast before my run. So that might look like oatmeal, a bagel, toast, that sort of thing. And then my other time of day I run is in the afternoon. So it's after lunch, before dinner, I need a snack, because it's usually long enough after lunch that lunch didn't count as my pre-fueling nutrition. So my favorite thing to eat then is a banana with peanut butter on it. That brings me a lot of joy. Does it meet the carb-only thing? Absolutely not. Peanut butter has some fat and protein. Does it bring me joy? Yes, so that's what I eat. So with that said, like how you do the carbs, how you do your nutrition, it's important to be cognizant of how that might be impacting you. But if it's going to be the food that you're going to be excited to eat, that's also really important.
Absolutely. And great point, Courtney, on when we're fueling for later in the day, it's easy to think, well, I had breakfast, I had lunch, I know there's fuel in there, right? But this is about topping off our glycogen stores so we can go out and have the best quality workout that we can have. And so oftentimes, I don't know when I started doing this. I think it's been within the last 5 years, but toaster pastries from Trader Joe's are my go-to thing. And so I'll sometimes have, like, depending if I'm hungry or not, like a half or a whole of one of those before I go do a workout, like a mid-afternoon type of workout. And so my encouragement to you would be, if you're looking for something to fuel that midday workout and you just haven't gone into that, try some different things. That might be a granola bar, it might be Courtney's peanut butter and banana toaster pastry, or something else. There's other, some people really want to have whole foods at this point in their day, and that's fine. The other thing is sometimes with whole foods, depending on what it is, you get a lot of fiber, so that may affect your gut differently. I know some people have really liked using dates because there's just a lot of natural sugar in there. That can be really good. Some of my favorites are toast or a bagel with peanut butter. Again, same thing as Courtney. It's not a hard and fast rule that we can't have any of those things. It's trying to figure it out. That works for me. My body does well with that. I always have coffee, sometimes before the afternoon run as well. It's a little tricky for me in the morning because I have coffee. I really want to get in the electrolyte drink mix in the morning as well. It's something I'm working on. We're all in a process of growth, right? But I don't always get all of that in because the coffee has the priority. And then if I'm doing something longer, if it's a race or a longer run, I might also try to get in. I might do the toast and peanut butter, but I love the regular whole food oatmeal, but going into a long run or going into a race, the packets that are more processed, those are going to allow us to have a faster access to that glycogen. The whole foods one can be good as well, because they have the complex carbohydrates. It takes longer to break down. And so you just kind of have to see what works for you on those ones.
So now getting into fueling during your run. It's not about fueling when you get hungry, because that usually means you've waited too long. It's about staying on top of your glycogen stores. So with that said, I would recommend starting within 30 minutes of the beginning of your long run. Definitely no more than an hour, because then you're wearing through your stores, and to make up that loss is incredibly challenging. It's very hard to make up those losses during your run. So most important to stay on top of it. It's helpful to figure out a cadence that works for you personally. I really like the eating every 30 minutes because on my watch, it's the 30 and it's the hour mark. So it makes it really easy for me to keep track of when I'm eating. Other people, every 45 minutes, you can play around with the cadence that works for you. I would recommend waiting no more than an hour, though, in between your snacks. The amount of carbs depends on the distance of the run. For a lot of the distances that we work with, carbs are going to be your main focus. However, when you get into some of the longer distances, like say you get into the 50 miles, 100 miles, etc., you're probably going to be wanting some real foods during those distances. So it makes sense that you might be adding in more fats and proteins for those longer distances than just straight carbs. But for shorter, quote unquote, distances like the 50K, you will probably focus solely on the carbs. So some of that can look like calories coming from a sports nutrition drink. Oftentimes we eat candy, salty snacks like pretzels, great carbs where you're getting some salt and electrolytes in there too. And then also real foods if that's something that brings you joy and something that's going to sit well in your stomach that you've practiced with. When you get to some of these longer distances, and then also with all the training you've done, you might get some palate fatigue with eating the same snacks over and over again, or a lot of this carb fueling comes from sweet things. You might get tired of eating sweets. So it's good to have a couple options of those snacks available to you on your run. That way, if you're absolutely tired of eating something, there's something else that might bring you joy in your pack. The other thing you also want to consider is how much water and electrolytes to carry. So then getting into like specific quantities for those calories and water, etc., is usually we look at how many calories per hour you're intaking during your run. I really like to shoot for around 200 kind of minimum per hour. And then for me, what that looks like is 2 snacks. So it could be 2 100-calorie snacks. In general, I shoot for 300. So again, what that changes to is 2 150-calorie snacks per hour. You may not be starting at that level. It takes a long time for your body to learn how to process that food while you're running. When you're running, your body is trying to put energy in other locations and not your digestive system. So to teach it to digest while doing activity is very hard. So starting lower and then working your way up is how we train it. And that is why doing the nutrition and fueling during your training runs is so important for then when you get to your race. For water, of course, so many variables go into that. It depends on how hot it is. It depends how sweaty you are as a person. It depends on the elevation you're running at, how intense your workout is. So that's something that you're going to have to play around with for yourself. But a good gauge is maybe between 3/4 to maybe a liter per hour. And notice that a lot of these measurements are per hour. And we do that because the time you're out there matters more than the distance you're traveling. If you travel 2 miles over an hour straight up a mountain versus, 10 miles over flat ground for a crazy example, I can't run that fast. But like, that's why we do time, not distance. Cause like if you're fueling the same for both of those runs, your body is not getting what it needs. Mary, do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that's such an important thing, because when I do come across a lot of people will set their timer on their watch to go by miles rather than time. And the time is so important because our body's still going through all the fuel, everything like that over a period of time. And that varies by person on how many miles we are. So that's really important. One thing I do on the timing is that I do a walk run kind of cadence when I'm training and when I'm racing. And so I usually run and then for about 9 minutes and walk for 1 minute. And I like those 10-minute increments because I use that walking to make sure I'm either taking in fluids or taking in fluid and fuel. And sometimes too, people find that it's hard to eat and run at the same time. And so you can use those moments to not only let your body have a little bit of needed rest, but also to be able to swallow and chew and everything safely and get that nutrition in that you need.
Yeah. And then also for water, your body needs water to process any of the fueling you're taking in, along with the electrolytes. So the any digestion issues could also be correlated with your water intake, not just your food intake, if you're not providing enough water for it to process. If you're not giving it enough water, then your body might actually start taking water from other places and bringing it into your digestive system to process it. So you actually might start dehydrating and causing a little bit of digestion distress. So taking in enough water is very important. And then with that, the amount of electrolytes you take in is correlated with the amount of water. So that is because the concentration of the electrolytes is very important, again, for how your body's digesting it. If your gut is too salty, your body's going to take in water from other places to dilute it. So correlating how much water and electrolytes you're taking is very important. That's why oftentimes we put the electrolytes in our water and there's recommended dosages for it. And that usually is like the most easy to digest. A great place to start is 300 milligrams of electrolytes per hour. But you will probably need to increase it depending on how your body feels. Not taking in enough electrolytes also might feel like you're bonking. You're going to feel more tired because your body doesn't have what it needs to process fully. Not getting enough electrolytes also might feel like you might start to get a headache. You might start to swell up. Having extreme unbalances of electrolytes can actually be very dangerous. So when you get into some of these really long distances, especially in the heat, it is very important to understand how your body responds to electrolytes so you are doing the best thing for your body. More electrolytes is not necessarily better for compensating it. It's based off what your body needs, and that takes practice. We're going to link in the show notes a podcast by the Trail Society that goes over the science of electrolytes, and I highly recommend you watch it or listen to it. They have a lot of really cool science information about how your body works with electrolytes. But again, a good place to start is about 300 milligrams per hour, and then going up based off of how you're feeling. And that's something that, as a coach, we definitely work with our athletes on for figuring out what works best for your body.
I just started listening to that podcast this morning when I was out on my run. It's so good. I completely agree with you. It's so good, and they just do a fabulous job of explaining the science, explaining, determining how much or little that you sweat and how much or little salt is in your sweat. And it is complex, and it's not impossible though. So don't let it be discouraging, but it's also super important to figure out. And that's why we keep stressing, do this early in your training, in the very beginning. When you set that goal, when you enter that race, that's when you start working on nutrition. I have a a nutrition kind of flow chart that I use with my athletes. I'm happy to share it with you. It really, you can work through nutrition for one workout, and I think it's so important to write notes so that you can say, okay, here's what I'm planning on doing. Here's everything I have planned out in my pack. And then I come back, I pull out my baggies and figure out how much I ate, and then I reflect on what was that. And then that's where we come in as coaches to work with you on that, to say, okay, let's figure this out. Here you took your notes, you said how you felt, and we can help you make some suggestions on what you should do next.
Yeah, and some strategies for that, like we've been talking about, we both do the baggies. So each individual baggie has whatever calories we're looking for personally. In my case, it's 150. Yeah,
Baggie.
Mary has her example. That way, it's a no-brainer in the middle of the run. You just pull out, you know exactly how much to eat. And then because you have all your baggies labeled, you know how much you ate at the end of the run. What I like to do is take a picture of my baggie of snacks and my watch for my long runs. And then I can keep track of what exactly I ate and when I ate it to better understand, maybe correlating how I felt later in the run. Like maybe at some point I bonk and I can correlate it to I stopped eating, or my gut felt really bad. I'm like, okay, it was after this specific snack. So there's a lot of power in understanding what and when you're eating and how it might affect what you're feeling.
I loved your pictures, Courtney. I think that was when I was coaching you. I think it was when I was coaching you. Somehow I saw those pictures, and as a coach, that was great because I could just say, okay, I know what you're eating here, here, and here. And that was, it made it easy for me to give you feedback.
Yeah. Also, with the idea of like taking these photos, that can be a really good resource if you are sensitive to tracking calories. If that is something that is not bringing you value in your running journey, then focus on number of snacks and not number of calories. And then as a coach, I can do my own mental math back here and let you know and give you feedback if I think you're eating enough or not, without maybe it causing you distress or issues if that's not something bringing you value right now.
Very good. Courtney, what are some of your favorite go-to snacks on the run?
I eat a lot of candies. I love the watermelon sour candies. I love a cookie. I just want all of my snacks to be cookies. They kind of crumble up, but that's okay. And I've enjoyed like pretzels and Pringles. So as a little salty snack, although I have inhaled some Pringles before. And because I like to try to eat while I'm running, and sometimes it does not end well. So it's okay to walk and eat your snack.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Not choking while you're eating is a very important thing. Yes.
Yes.
Um, I make a waffle sandwich. I love peanut butter and jelly. And then the peanut butter and jelly like oozes down. It like fits in the little parts of the waffle. And there is a timing thing on that. I live in Tucson, so we're in the heat a lot, but a warm waffle sandwich is not a good thing. So it does have to be it does have to be well kept.
Yeah, I have eaten um, like a leftover pizza before. Early in the run, just brought it in my pack.
Yeah.
But I also love the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. When you're doing some of your own longer runs, to have snacks accessible and making your own little aid station so you don't have to carry all of the snacks you need for that long run. I like to leave a little bit of special, like really good food there, like a sandwich or something. That way I can be excited, or a cold drink, you know?
Yes. Oh, so good. I love the car aid station, and that kind of goes with, yeah, how do we do all this? How do we carry it in our packs? But then how do we do this and we go out on a long run? Because maybe you find this great course, but it's 15 miles and you need to replenish. You have to figure out, what am I going to do? Is somebody going to drive out and meet me somewhere with food? And I like to do a lot of loops just so I can come back to my car and
Yeah.
and get food. I think that's
I
a very good point.
Yeah, I do have to say though, with my pack, I did do a 27-mile run one time, where I had all my snacks for the day just in the pack. And then I had places I could pick up water. I did not have enough
Mm.
water, but
Yeah.
I was able to carry 27 miles of snacks in that pack. So
Yeah, some
that was
places
pretty
have
good.
water. We have the Arizona Trail here, and so there'll be, because so many people do through hiking there, there's usually water and water spots on the trail. So you
Nice.
can find those things, or even just depends if you're out in the, urban areas. I've stopped at stores, and that's kind of fun. You've talked a couple times and said something I love is just having something that's kind of a special snack. I think that it's amazing how uplifting that can be in the middle of a run. So if you can stop at some kind of like gas station store or something and pick up anything that can really turn around a run, especially in the middle if you're having a hard day. Well, we get into the fall, we're done with our run, and we still need to keep fueling. We just keep saying this, just keep fueling. It's like Dory, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep fueling. Um, so when we're done with our run, it's really important that we get some quality recovery fueling within 30 minutes. And so a very common ratio for this is a 4-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein. So 4 being the carbohydrates, 1 being the protein. What that can look like, I often do a smoothie. I made one today when I got home from my run. I put in some recovery. I use a lot of the Scratch products. I used their recovery drink with some protein powder, and I love matcha. Put a little matcha in there and blend that with some frozen bananas and ice and choice milk. And that's just that initial thing that you get in is really, really important. One thing I'll do if I can't, it's going to be a little bit of a drive from where I finished my run to home, is that I will just take that in a thermos. So I will just put that over ice and put it in a thermos. And that's a rule I have for myself is I have to take that down before I leave, because that's not safe to finish a long run and you're tired and exhausted and you haven't eaten. And now you're going to go and operate a vehicle, we just have to, at least for me anyway, that's not safe. So having something like that, it also could just be a small meal. Oftentimes, our stomachs don't feel like eating a big meal right away. So getting that smaller 4-to-1 meal in right away, then within the next couple of hours, having some kind of large meal, still sticking to that ratio. As as we get a little farther away, there might be some more fat and protein, or increasing that ratio of protein. But it's very important because at that point, our glycogen stores are depleted. So we need to refuel those glycogen stores. And that 30 minutes, that's key, because that's really when our glycogen is best restored at that point. We've also broken down a lot of muscle fiber. So having that protein on board is starting to help rebuild that muscle fiber. Courtney, one thing is, and anything else to add on that? And then what do you like to have post run?
Nothing so much to add, other than I really value a snack that I look forward to. Whether it's like a little pastry that I'm excited for, or I love the smoothies, the like with a little bit of like Greek yogurt and fruit and stuff. I love that. Oftentimes I'm thirsty, so also the smoothie hits that also. But I think one of the biggest things you can do for yourself is have that snack put aside before you do your run, so you don't have to think about it afterwards, or it's waiting in your car when you're done. Help your future self out by having that snack ready. And then, yeah, for me, I personally often correlate my runs to dinner time. Mm-hmm. And so I'll have a little snack when I get home, and then I'll make dinner. So that makes it kind of easy and less thought going into the snacks because it's already connected to more fueling. And then again, just the importance of this. If you're depleted and then you don't take in more fueling afterwards, I think a lot of people feel like maybe it doesn't matter because you're done with the workout now. But if you want the value from that workout in your body and muscles, your body needs that energy to recover. And if you're not recovering, then you're not actually gaining value in the same way from those workouts. So it's incredibly important to kind of connect those ideas of it's not just about how you feel right now, but it's about what your body needs to get value out of what you just did.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so important. So important. One thing I was thinking that I wanted to comment on is that you've probably heard a lot of our examples have been like processed type of snacks or candy. And if you go to an aid station at a trail race, it is there's kind of smorgasbord of candy and chips and all of these things. And it might we might term that unhealthy. But in these moments, that food is very valuable. That type of food that one that we want to eat because we might be having that palate fatigue, and also they're just great ways to get salt and to get very fast acting carbohydrates into our bodies. As we're getting into our recovery, though, we one of the a piece of advice I've heard about recovery is to eat a rainbow of foods as one of the R's of recovery. And so at that point, bringing in some different colors from fruits and vegetables as we're adding in the protein and the carbs into our recovery is really important, because those micronutrients are very important. Those antioxidants are very important to our recovery and to our overall health. And that's a really good place for those foods.
Yeah, and also just going off of something you just said of labeling a food healthy. A food is healthy if it's bringing you the value you need in that moment. And so for us in the middle of a long run, candy itself might not traditionally be labeled as healthy. But in the midst of a very long endurance event, if it's bringing you the fuel you need, that is a healthy choice for you, depending on what your body needs. But fueling is healthy.
Yeah.
And how your body processes a piece of candy while you're in the middle of a long run is fundamentally different than how your body processes candy if you're sitting at home. Your body is using that energy right away. That sugar is going into your blood and it's being used right away. It does not have the same negative effects that you might associate with candy when you might be a little bit more sedentary. So it's really important to think about how you're thinking about food and what's bringing value to you and when you need that value.
Well said, Courtney. Thank you so much. And that really wraps up what we have to share today about nutrition. There's so much more. And we look forward to coming back to nutrition. If you have questions, please feel free to send us a message and ask us questions. We'd be happy to chat with you more. As we turn to what is next on the Blue Fire podcast, so we have a question. What do you look for in a running buddy? Someone to eat all your snacks with and to get the snacks out of your backpack. Courtney, what do you look for in a running buddy?
I look for somebody who I know is okay going at whatever pace we end up going at. A lot of the trail runs are a lot slower than some people realize. And to have somebody who is more than happy to go slow, if that's what we need to do, that's an important trait for me. I don't want to feel like I'm holding somebody back, and I never feel like I'm being held back because we're just on an adventure. And so I think that's an important trait. Also, I love to chat. And so having somebody to chat with, to have the miles go by is important.
Very good, very good. I would agree with you absolutely on that. And as I was thinking about this question, I was thinking more about how I want to show up as a running buddy more, because I just haven't been doing that in my most recent season of life. And so really for me, I think showing up is the thing, but it's more me showing up. We have some great running groups here in Tucson that I've enjoyed going and participating with. But one of my goals is just to show up more and to cultivate some more running buddies in my life.
I love that. And on that topic, our next podcast will be with Carly, one of our running buddies, where we get to interview her about her experience with long distance running. So look forward to that. We're excited for it.
Definitely, definitely. Well, thank you for joining us today for the Blue Fire podcast. And we will have resources in our show notes, so please make sure to check those out. And we can't wait to talk with you again.
Awesome. Thank you.